Do the playoff math. And what have you got? Maybe 14 teams vying for the coveted spots, absent bid Steelers. We'll break that down. And the coaching carousel is the first domino finally going to fall in Plattsburgh. And should I stay or should I go? This indecision's bugging me. Indecision, no molester. Lane Kiffin and the story. Rece Davis, Pete Thamel, Dan Wetzel, College Game Day Podcast. Glad you're listening on this week as we get closer and closer to breaking down the playoff. And one of the most fascinating coaching carousel times that I can remember in college ball, basically because you have one coach who's the object of everybody's affection. And while we don't have any rooting interest, Pete and Dan, except for good games and great storylines, I will admit, watching a little bit from Oxford on Saturday night, I was thinking, how hilarious is this going to be if the interim coach-led, Billy Gonzalez-led Florida Gators go in and throw this coaching carousel into a weird spin? Didn't happen. Instead, we're waiting on the Lane Kiffin decision. Is it stay at Ole Miss? Very appealing. Is it go to Florida? Very appealing. Is it go to LSU? Probably very appealing. What do we got, Pete?
Well, this is a linchpin week for the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes. Ole Miss is on a bye; they don't play again till the Egg Bowl Friday night. I think that's the 27th. So this is the week where Ole Miss, which has been aggressive in retaining Lane Kiffin, not just this year, but every year since he's been there, they have prioritized him, taken care of him financially. He's making over $9 million a year. He's They have established themselves as a destination job in the SEC. And credit Ole Miss for this. They are ahead of the game in NIL, and that is a big reason why Lane Kiffin's had such good rosters these last few years. So this is Ole Miss's quandary. If they don't get a yes and a signature from Lane Kiffin this week on a new deal, it is going to signal that he's likely going to go elsewhere. And Ole Miss isn't going to get outbid financially, right? This isn't the 90s where someone can come in and just crush them. They have shown they're ready to spend at the highest levels of the SEC. If Lane Kiffin doesn't commit, and then if he ends up committing elsewhere, or the appearance of him committing elsewhere emerges, there would be a huge signal, guys, if he doesn't sign something this week, that he's looking elsewhere and potentially going to be going elsewhere, right? So then the conundrum becomes this. Ole Miss is a playoff lock, right, Rece? You'd say that? They're,
barring a loss to Mississippi State. Yeah.
Yeah. But I would think even if they lose to Mississippi State, they're pretty good.
I think they're on the bubble.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
To be honest
that's
with
fair.
you. Yeah.
All right. The question then becomes, would Lane Kiffin, if he is headed elsewhere and he says deal in the drawer, he's agreed to something or whatever it is, because remember the gap between Friday night, the 27th, and the playoff starting is December 19th, right? Mm-hmm. Would Ole Miss let a departing Lane Kiffin coach in the playoff? And the answer is probably not, right? If this guy is going to go to one of your SEC rivals, and I don't think anyone Power 5 to Power 5 in conference would let a coach who's leaving a team stick around and coach for the playoff. So I just think, guys, it's a huge factor in this. The timing was always going to be hard. We've talked about it on this podcast a bunch of times, right? The timing of these moves for playoff coaches are incredibly tricky. If you add in the fact that part of leaving means you can't coach your playoff team in the playoff, it's going to be a huge factor. And I've gotten the feeling that Ole Miss at the end of this week may start running out of a little bit of patience, being like, hey, what else can we do here? You know what I mean? What else can we possibly do? So as with Lane Kiffin always, it's not going to be boring. There's going to be theater. There's going to be drama. We saw the chestnuts he dropped on Twitter for Ole Miss all week, retweeting videos of Bon Jovi singing and, taking pictures of Kiffin 2026 hats in the what appeared to be the state trooper car. But yeah, this is the week where we should get some clues onto what Lane's intentions are.
You think Ole Miss? What percentage surety do you have that Ole Miss would go hard line and say no, you're done? Like that was the last game. Beating Florida's the last game. Lane Kiffin coaches at Ole Miss.
It's always going to be hypothetical till it happens, right. Dan. Yeah. But it's a proud place, man.
Yeah.
It's a proud place. And the factor of him not doing it is going to factor into his decision making. That is
I would imagine
that is something that has emerged in the last week as a reality in this.
You know what though, Dan? I think you and I might be aligned here. Ole Miss last won a national championship in football, sort of. Only time, 1960. They shared it with Minnesota, I believe. If I've got a chance to win it, we talk about this being year to year. I understand Ole Miss doesn't want to be used like this. I mean, not used. They don't want to be perceived. That's a bad way to phrase it. I apologize to Ole Miss people and to Kiffin. This is just business. They don't want to be in the position to be viewed as, they're going to be cast aside after the end of the playoff run. But the flip side of it is Lane Kiffin might win a national championship for you. You still get the trophy. I let him do it, man. I said earlier on this podcast, I would wait to hire the guy I wanted, even if it, messed up this next class. I would certainly let him stay and coach this out if I thought I could win it. Because I tell you what, my guess is the distraction will be too much, but I'd spin that wheel of fortune. I'd give him a chance to try to win the thing, I think.
Yeah, this is delicious, obviously, which is why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
So a couple parts to this is, like if Lane Kiffin does not sign a deal and says, I'm leaving I am going to walk. Let's say he says, no, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go to Florida or whatever. But he knows that he has to walk out on the best team he's ever coached.
Yeah.
What the heck are we saying about Lane Kiffin? I mean, you're just quitting on a potential Final Four team, national championship team. What kind of coach are you that you just say, I have to leave this team that where I can compete for a national title to go somewhere else where I might be able to compete for a national title? This would be an unbelievably stunning step away and would say an enormous amount to many people. Look, people will apologize for it. People floor said, who care, whatever. I would look at that and say, what the heck? You're quitting the team. You're quitting the team. It'd be no difference than if Trinidad Chambliss said, I'm quitting the team to prepare for the NFL draft. People would lose their mind. Okay, so if that ultimatum is set up that way and Lane Kiffin walks, that is a train wreck. How do you even go back to your players the next year at the next place and say, yeah, I'm all in. We're all in. Hey, man, we're, brotherhood, all for one, the fist is tighter. I mean, how do you do that as a coach? Are you a coach or are you just chasing money? That is crazy. A. B, I get why Ole Miss at the same time, man, you hired him. Let him coach. Do you just let him coach? I'm not as solid on the argument as this, but I'd be like, I'm kind of with you, Rece. Like, we ain't won anything. 1960, it wasn't even, the sport was not integrated. I bet you Grambling would have whooped them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that 1960 team, I mean, I don't know. Jackson State was probably better. So I don't care about 1960. The sport is the sport. That's history of American history. Fine. But we're Ole Miss. We're not Alabama. We talked about this a couple weeks ago when in basketball when Bill Frieder decided he was going to leave Michigan basketball in 1989 to go to Arizona State, and Bo Schembechler coined the term Michigan man by saying, hey, Michigan will be coached by a Michigan man. He gives the job to Steve Fisher. They win the title. That's basketball, and they weren't number one in the country or number four. Like, this is totally different. Do you let him coach? Oh, man. How do you kick out the coach in the middle of your dream season? And then there's the third part to this. If Lane Kiffin is leaving, you got to hire a coach. And you can't be sitting around either and waiting. I guess you can, Charlie Weiss Jr. gets the job or something like that. That's be about your only bit. I don't know. This is going to be fantastic. I don't have all the answers. If Lane Kiffin walks from a 10-1 team.
Yeah.
Come on, Lane.
Yeah, and think about this too. To your point, Dan, you could say, well, let Pete Golding run it, let Charlie Weiss Jr. run it. You don't think they're being recruited to go to the next place if he does that? I mean, it's a very difficult situation because we've seen the other coaching domino we're waiting to fall, James Franklin. He won a ton of games. I know he lost a lot of big ones, but he won a ton of games, and they fired him, man. He hit a little streak in this season. They fired him. Now you're looking around wondering if they're going to get a coach better than he is. So I understand the business aspect of it, and Lane Kiffin has every right to make his career what he wants it. And if he wants it to be at Florida or LSU or wherever else, more power to him. It's a business. That's fine. But everything you said, I agree with, Dan. I think all of this also comes at a price. If you walk out on this team or you put Ole Miss in a position, it might not be wise for Ole Miss to put him in the position. Maybe they just continue to recruit him, continue to try to persuade him that at the end of this run, this is where you need to be. It's where you want to be, and they continue to drag it out as much as they can. Maybe that's not what they're inclined to do. But I think it comes at a cost for both sides. It comes at a cost for Kiffin if he makes it clear he's not staying, because you're risking wrecking maybe the greatest season Ole Miss has ever had. And if you don't, I mean, look, you go 6-5 a couple of years in a row, and they might whack you, and the Florida job's not open anymore. So, I get both sides of it. But the one thing I would say, Pete, the number one thing for all of the anxious Ole Miss fans right now to watch out for, if Lane Kiffin at any point says, the only way I'm leaving Oxford is in a pine box, he's gone. Tommy Tuberville said that in 1998. A mere 2 days, less than 48 hours later, the pine box was not packed with him. It was packed with his stuff and shipped to Auburn. So I would watch out for that comment.
Pine
otherwise,
that's the tell.
The only way I'm leaving Ole Miss is in a pine box, unless I get the Auburn job. Right?
He's going to tweet a pine box. He's going to tweet a pine box.
No,
okay?
I hope.
He's definitely going to tweet a pine box.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
EC at Rece Davis. Pine box picture.
Here's the other one, guys. Like, what if you're one of these suitors, right? And you're LSU and you're Florida. At what point do you have to move on with your search, right? Like, what if there's inertia here and we get through the final weekend of games, so the 2 weekends from now, the Thanksgiving weekend of games, and he hasn't committed, because look, if you're Verge Osbury at LSU or you're Scott Strickland at Florida, you just can't have a leap of faith that on December 19th, if Lane Kiffin loses, which look, they'd be home playoff game. How weird would this all be for a home playoff game, by the way, if it was still ambiguous? You'd have to have some sort of signal. So if it's December 5th and LSU's still open and their search is quiet and Florida's filled with a different code, like there's just like, what would the high wire look like if this thing plays out? I mean, that just all of the ripples that come from this, the whole carousel is sitting and waiting for this decision right now. There's just no other way. There's no other way to say it. Virtually every ripple of every job is going to domino off from here.
With the caveat that this is extraordinarily easy for me to say because I don't have to make the decision and I'm not going to get fired as a result of it. Philosophically, if that's who you want, stand your ground. Wait. Try to get him. Go all in. There are other coaches out there. You can find somebody else. You know what? I mean, that's what I would do, man. If I'm that sold, if I think there's still a chance, I'm going to do it.
Governor Landry would imprison you if you don't hire the best coach.
Well, perhaps. Perhaps.
Angola, man, they got a tough prison down there too.
That's not a good prison.
You don't want that smoke. Interesting. So
that was a joke, by the way. I want to be very clear about that so it doesn't get aggregated. Thank you.
What is happening to our society? That was clearly a joke.
Yes.
I mean, Rece should be imprisoned. I like this.
Yeah.
This will do good for ratings. We need.
I am mocking the Louisiana governor. That is all.
Okay.
How dare you?
Do not
be sure you go mock someone from the other side now. Just
I watch a lot of prison shows. That is not one place you want to mock Pete. You might find yourself in there too somehow.
Thank you.
Yeah, you don't want that. Look, interesting on Rece there. That I my thing would be like just move on. But I do think way too much is made, okay, about we're gonna win. We got to get the guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
We got to win and we have seen this over and over and over that the guy that we all sit there and say that's gonna work. Okay, you go back to like Scott Frost going back to Nebraska, right? Jeez, he's coming off a 13-0 season at UCF. The hero comes back. How could this not work? It doesn't work. Okay. Or the high profile hirings, even Brian Kelly at LSU or whatever, a couple years ago, there's a whole bunch of them. And then you look at all these coaches that are in contention and they came up from as assistant or they're hired from James Madison or whatever. I think Pete Carroll was the 6th choice at USC and was like the greatest, one of the all-time greatest coaches. So,
and they were so mad. They were so angry when he got that job.
NFL retread. What is this ridiculousness? He wasn't even that good in the NFL at that point. He hadn't, he'd been like I think he made the playoffs once at New England, but he was not later Super Bowl champ. All those things. So Florida, LSU, you're gonna take Billy Napier, right? I thought Billy Napier, right, did really well. So everyone's focused on we got to get this guy. When you should be able to get a good coach and your program and all the advantages that you've spent so many years at these places building up, help that coach get really good. So if you really, I can go two ways on this, and I don't like arguing both sides, but I could see saying, that's it. We'll just wait it out for Lane Kiffin because we'll get somebody. But I also kind of feel like, look, man, if he's not committed, I don't want him. I just think the timing here, how do you quit? You better think you're going to win 2 or 3 national titles at your next place because you will forever be known as the guy who quit. Bobby Petrino became famous for something else that doomed one of his jobs. But prior to that, rolling down the highway on his Harley, he was known for quitting the Atlanta Falcons in the middle of the season to take a college job, and people were outraged in football going, "What? How do you do that?" And he survived it. I can't imagine walking from this thing and trying to explain why. You're that sold that the University of Florida is that much better of a job. Maybe if it's a group of 5 job or something, you can argue it. And we all say, okay, or it's your alma mater. I don't know, something like that. But man, this would be Lane. It will forever be known for that.
Can I tell a funny story about the Bobby Petrino Falcons situation? So
Bobby Petrino stories.
When the Arkansas scandal, and that was a scandal, unfurled, I remember this is newspaper day, like a long time ago. I remember finding Lawyer Malloy's phone number. Remember Lawyer Malloy, famous Patriot safety. I think he went to Washington. Really good NFL player. And called him. Obviously, I don't know Lawyer Malloy. And he answers the phone. I tell him who I am. I could just like hear him snickering. And then I was like, Bobby Petrino, Arkansas, do you have any comment? And he just like paused and goes, "Karma, man. Karma." And I was like,
thank you.
Do you have anything else to say, Lawyer? Nah, karma, man. Karma.
He left. Petrino left. Wasn't it? It was a typewritten note in the locker of every locker. Was it laminated or not? Do we know? I don't know if it was or not.
The time to laminate. That's impressive.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't think he did. I don't think he laminated.
Either way, that's the other thing. 2 things Ole Miss fans should watch out for in Ole Miss administration: pine boxes and Lane asking where a printer is.
Yeah, if he's down getting laminated.
Where can I feed this note out and print out 115 copies of this? If he does that, they've got a problem.
Yeah. The easiest path, as it has evolved here, is staying. Right?
Yes.
And staying doesn't mean staying forever, but the easiest path, the cleanest path is staying.
He could get another great job in a year or two.
Yeah.
He's like, this isn't the only job.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's not like this is my alma mater. This is the one I got to have. Like he's been through this with the contentious leaving. Yeah. He left Tennessee. They rioted. They had a proposal go in front of the Knoxville City Council to rename the local water treatment plant the Lane Kiffin Sewer Treatment Facility. Like people were angry. If you think they were mad when he left Tennessee after a 7-6 season, oh my.
Is there a waste treatment plant in Oxford? I've never noticed one, nor have I ever smelled one. It smells delightful there most of the time.
Maybe it's just all the porta potties on the square. That's probably the closest thing you can you can get to it. One last little point to put a bow on this. The administration at Florida's NIL. How's it gone? Early days of NIL. Well, they got sued over Jaden Rashada, right? Mm-hmm. Like clearly it was not built well. LSU, Brian Kelly had to give $1 million of his own dollars to kickstart funding so they could be competitive in NIL. What's Ole Miss done? They have spent, and they have the best mousetrap. Now, I think the philosophical question here about the Ole Miss job now is, now that we've settled into like relative rules, right? Like there's still sidecar NIL and plenty of Sutter fudge, but like there's rev share, there's like a little bit, does the market settle to where the bigger brands with the bigger stadiums and the better tradition, do things resettle so those schools have advantage? Do the traditional advantages return? Does that make sense? Like, do those return? And it's, I think that's a fascinating like March pod topic, right? We could talk about it all day. But Ole Miss has like been ahead. Like, I want to be clear about that. Like, and that has helped Lane Kiffin tremendous. Lane Kiffin's a very good coach, right? He does an excellent job. He's a gifted offensive mind. He doesn't call the plays anymore, but he obviously has a big hand in the game plan, and does a really nice job. But if you're Ole Miss and you've done everything to stay ahead, I could certainly imagine your urgency to, he's your competitive advantage now too. And they have done everything to keep him.
Circumstances are very different, wildly different. But Pete, you'll remember me relaying a conversation, which I feel more comfortable relaying now. I went and visited with Hugh Freeze for about an hour before he coached a game at Auburn. And I remember, and I want to be clear, he didn't say this, but I remember having a conversation with Pete shortly thereafter, and I said, man, I get the feeling he messed with Happy. I get the feeling that something made him feel like he had to come back to the SEC because of the way he had exited and what had happened, that he sort of had to face the demons, but that he was happy at Liberty and enjoyed himself. Situations are wildly different, and certainly the circumstances are different, but that principle remains the same. If Lane Kiffin is happy in Oxford, and he certainly seems so, he should take that into consideration. But sometimes happy is also striving, achieving, building something new, being at a place that you always thought you might be. The connection by his children's grandfather was a legendary player at Florida. The LSU advantages that we always talk about are inherent, are compelling. But I would keep it in mind. Yeah, keep it in mind, not messing with happy. If in fact he is, everybody's definition of that's a little bit different. But you can sometimes find yourself in what seems like a tremendous job. And you are excited about the job, but there's that little nag of, boy, what did I leave behind? Why did I do that? And that can be debilitating, especially in a job like this one. So
I think there's some advantages are still there. Mm-hmm. Proximity to talent always helps, but those advantages are lessened greatly by NIL. People remember when they first started with the whole idea of NIL. I remember saying this is going to be great for places like Ole Miss.
Yeah.
This is what will finally close that gap where you used to say they have no chance, right? Was it Tuberville went from Ole Miss to Auburn, right? That's how big. Like he made that.
That was the Pine Box.
Yeah. Right. There you go. But that would not be the case again. You're not going to Auburn. Florida, LSU, yes, there are advantages.
Well, Lane Kiffin had a chance, Dan, 3 years ago.
But they're closer. That's right. He could have done it. I think you can win a national title at Ole Miss. It's a great school. It's a great community. He's got a brand. Everyone knows he's in total control. The school's 100% behind him. You can win national titles at places like Ole Miss. You can come as close as you can. Maybe no one can do it this year because Ohio State's going to roll you. Okay, you're not Ohio State. You're not whatever, but you're a lot closer than you ever were.
Mm-hmm. On this subject, one of the things, Pete, I felt like that you were alluding to, that maybe patience is starting to wear a little thin at Ole Miss. What about Virginia Tech and James Franklin? James Franklin is, after Kiffin, I would think, and for a certain group of schools, is the prize of this coaching carousel. But everybody wants to be wanted. No one wants to feel like that they were settled for. Any feeling that way, that, and James, by the way, James has every right to do this. He's in a position, especially after what happened, that he should make sure about whatever the next step is for him. I'm not being critical of him for this. Is there a feeling at Virginia Tech that if they get him, that ultimately it was because some other one didn't open at the right time or the right domino, and that he would prefer to be elsewhere?
So I think where we are with James in Virginia Tech, Rece, is here we are Monday morning around 9 a.m. The talks of Franklin and Virginia Tech are progressing. There's a ton of mutual interest. I think, I can safely say at this point, there's an expectation that they are going to get together. These deals can be complicated. So, look, James Franklin's talked to other schools. I think that goes without saying, right? Like, the schools would be foolish not to talk to James Franklin, right? He's a free agent, no strings attached. Like, it makes a ton of sense to do that with those open jobs. But it's clear at this point, if they want to move on him, like, they had every opportunity to move on him and haven't. So Virginia Tech has targeted him and been patient and diligent in their courtship of him. So will it come together on Monday? It seems that way, but look, these things are a high wire act. You don't know in real time until there's pen on the paper.
No one's ever been offered a job until they already accepted it. That's always
That is very true. All conference votes are also unanimous, Stan.
All votes are unanimous. Yeah, we've covered a lot of these stories. You don't report anything until the guy's already doing it. This would be, I think, a really good hire for Virginia Tech. And I am often I'm uncertain about coaches kind of stepping back. They've made a ton of money, trying another act at no offense to Virginia Tech, but not quite. It's not quite Penn State. But James Franklin is highly motivated to prove everybody wrong. And I think I think the recruiting ties in the area, the experience, the way Virginia Tech's kind of needs to recruit the Mid-Atlantic and the North a little bit, and they got to recruit the South a little bit. A lot of experience. I think James Franklin would be terrific for Virginia Tech if that goes down.
I can't imagine a better situation for Franklin and for Virginia Tech. A couple that I could see Franklin being in, and I also wonder about as good as Penn State's been and as close as they've come, but they haven't been able to knock giants off the pedestal in the Big Ten. That won't be an issue in the ACC because there's a new giant every television window. We have the wheel of destiny in the ACC for a reason. So if he can build something that even approximates what he put together at Penn State, then all of a sudden they become the team to beat in the ACC in very short order. Now, look, Clemson is not going to shrink meekly into the night. Florida State's not going to step back. Miami's not going away, but Miami has this habit of stepping on a rake. Clemson's lost its mojo a little bit. Florida State has lost its mojo a lot of bit. So it's a good time to step into a place that is well resourced, that has a commitment, that has some history, that would like to be good again. The first college football game I ever saw involved Virginia Tech, but it was certainly not the Virginia Tech of now. The scoreboard read, instead of Virginia Tech, the scoreboard read VPI. And at the end of the game, they had 6 points and the other team had 77. So it certainly wasn't the glory years of VPI football. But this could be the next era of it after the great run that Frank Beamer had there. And they were patient with Beamer, too, because Beamer was close to getting whacked in the early 90s. And then all of a sudden, they transform into a power. So.
Yeah, and it's one of those places there where Frank Beamer is their tradition, right? Now it's 29 years of great tradition. After they fired Brent Pry, they played a bye game against the 1AA affiliate, and the place is packed. I mean, that is an awesome fan base.
Yep.
They care. They have proximity to talent. They now, with this $229 million or whatever it is, should have money, right? They've at least given the appearance of we want to spend like Clemson's spending. James Franklin was twice a Maryland assistant. And here's a fun fact. He was also a James Madison assistant. So he has been and if you're at Penn State and it's going well, and this was the case with Paterno, you need to, recruit well in the DMV, and he recruited well in the DMV. So like that corridor, he is very familiar with as a head coach. He can build a staff. He can build a program. He can build there's a lot of really good about James Franklin, who can go there and revive Virginia Tech quickly to ACC contender. For all that was made about Bill Belichick's hire in the ACC, the quick turn lesson here is actually Jake Dicker, right? I believe they're 7-3. They got robbed by the refs against Virginia Tech, against Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech,
yeah. That's if you hire the right guy and he brings in the right crew of players, and that's really what it is, right? You're bringing in 50 guys or whatever. You can be at the higher end of the league in a pretty short order, and it would be reasonable to expect James Franklin to do that. A vast majority of Penn State's commitments have decommitted. I'm not going to say they're all going to go to Virginia Tech, but I think they'd all look at it, right? Like they've shown with their decommitment they were as committed to him as they were to Penn State. I'm sure others will go elsewhere. I think somebody flipped to Indiana over the weekend, but there's a chance he could build a really good high school class in short order, portal class. I don't think Virginia Tech's untalented either from talking to people who played them over the years. They just haven't found their mojo.
And interesting that the guy he would be replacing, if this goes through directly, the Brent Pry was once his defensive coordinator.
Yeah. I was told by a scout this week that they the operations are run very similar. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like when you leave James Franklin, like anyone, you leave Urban Meyer, you leave Jim Harbaugh, whatever, you run like this type of practice, this type of way, like those, so like the program structure would likely not change significantly, which is just kind of interesting.
Then what do you think? What is lost in all of this in Lane Kiffin and LSU and Florida and James Franklin? The job James Franklin was removed from has gotten a couple of guys some massive raises, and what are they going to do? I mean, this looks like a real potential for that they might wind up with a somewhat unproven commodity, at least in that situation. Maybe a proven coach, but not in this area, not in this conference, not at this level, whatever it might be.
I don't know, Pete. Who do you got as their leader? I don't want to just, I think they'll end up with a fine coach. Whether it's maybe they do go with Chesney. I've heard Chesney in UCLA. I've heard Chesney at James Madison. I don't know. Maybe they go that route. I'm not really that worried about the name that they get. But I don't know. What do you got, Pete?
There is a little bit of an aura of mystery hanging over the Penn State job right now. I can't. I could probably give a list for Penn State candidates with a lot less conviction than I could all of the other big jobs that are open right now. It's going to be interesting theater. I think there was ambition by Pat Kraft when they fired James Franklin to try to go big and to try to land a thumper name. And I certainly don't want to say that ambition has abated, but I think there are some market realities that have set in there with who's going to go to the playoff, combined with a couple of raises. Where it's going to be a very interesting calculus to see where he ends up. But I could not give you like the favorite. Like I couldn't say with reasonable certainty. I think it's going to be this guy, or this guy's the leader. This guy's the backup. I'd just be disingenuous if I did that.
Let's turn this to the field a little bit. A weekend in which
field? What field? There's a field? They play the
there is. Oh, well, I know. Oh, wait a minute. Before we go to the field, let's do something far more important than Pete. What was the most non-birthday phone call? Pete's birthday was on Sunday, right, Pete? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. What was the most non-birthday phone call you had to deal with when you should have been celebrating with Kate and Teddy and Tegan and hopefully some other family members? And who called and jacked up your birthday?
So we really celebrated on Saturday. It actually worked out really well. Got home from Pittsburgh. Boston and Pittsburgh very close where I live. So it was very, very reasonable. So we did our celebrating, got some cupcakes, got a dinosaur card from Teddy, a dinosaur card from Tegan. So it was good. It was a good day. So we kind of took Saturday. Saturday's pretty quiet, really, when it came down to it. Saturday evening to lock in. So Sunday was just, it was a nice day. We went to dinner last night. It was kind of a work day. So there was just the normal flurry of calls that come in on Sundays. I don't think there was any disruption this time of year. Sundays are busy in a good way.
Okay, so
Rece, when Pete, you get to Pete's age, you got to celebrate early because you don't know if he's going to make it. It's like someone's turning 90. You gotta, close enough. A couple weeks early.
Early bird.
You want to risk it. You got to go Saturday night. Nothing. Tomorrow's not promised at this age.
Or any age for that matter.
At any age.
Pete, I don't know how old you are. I've got to guess. Best player jersey number. Who's the greatest player to wear the jersey number of your age?
Man. Gretzky? No, yeah, not Gretzky for sure. Do you mind telling your age? I don't mind telling my age.
Is it 45?
My age at all? No, it is older than
48.
Older than 45. It is 48. That is correct.
48.
So, I will tell you that the best athletes that have run 48, according to this banditranker.com.
What a weird number to pick. Yeah, that is hard.
So I will go with.
I can't think of one.
Lee Smith was number 48. Remember the fireball relief closer?
I thought he was 46. Is he 48?
So that's what iconic MLB players are number 48. This is according to a completely unreliable website.
Well, maybe we're both.
Bud Dupree is in the NFL at number 48. That's who they have. Remember, Bud Dupree played at Kentucky, didn't he? Right?
Yeah.
And Torrey Hunter wore 48. And so did Jacob deGrom, who's obviously a very good player too. But I'm going to go with Lee Smith. Didn't Lee Smith close for the Red Sox for a while, Dan? Am I right about that?
I believe he was a Red Sox. Yeah, he came in. Yeah. Throw the pitch. Yeah.
Throw the speedball by you.
I think make you look like a fool, boy.
There we go.
I think Gale Sayers, while 40, most famously with the Bears, I think he was 48 at Kansas. So that'd be a pretty good one. Interesting.
Let's see here. We got Lee Smith. Yeah, we got him in Boston for the 1990 season. Looks like they maybe picked him up for a playoff push. And did he go back to Boston? No, but he was briefly a Red Sox. So I did that. Oh no, he was there twice. He was there in '89. Sorry, he was there in '89 at 25 saves, and there in '90. So that's like peak childhood for me right there.
He was really good in '89.
Yeah. You want to play this game, Dan? How old a man are you? Who's the most famous jersey number there?
I would have to look this up too. Do we really want to do this? Let's see.
No, we don't have to. Never mind. Never mind.
All right.
But what we can do, if we're going to say the most famous numbers right now, I would say that in the college football playoff picture after this weekend, that there are 3 teams that are locked. And if you want to define locked, that means if they lose the game, they're still making it in some fashion. I think those 3 teams are pretty obvious. It's Ohio State, Indiana, and Texas A&M after a remarkable comeback. There can be no great comeback without a great meltdown, and South Carolina helped them for sure. So great comeback, great meltdown, kept the Aggies undefeated and solidified their spot. Whether they make the SEC championship game, which I expect them to do, but even if they don't, they're good. I would say after that, the teams that just win the next game, they're in regardless of what else happens. I would put in that category Georgia, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Alabama, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Oregon. But there's enough of a sliver of a window for any of those teams that don't perform well to be vulnerable to USC and Miami. Now, and then you also have the bid stealing situations, which I would put BYU or a second Big 12 team in the bid stealing situation. And if Miami gets itself in position for an large, then the ACC champion potentially is going to be a bid stealer. So somebody in that group of that looks like at the moment win and in almost, somebody's going to wind up vulnerable at the back of the line. And a lot of different things can happen. Oregon USC will sort itself out. I would suggest that if Oregon, who if I didn't list this, I should have had them in if I didn't say it with the win and in group. Oregon USC, we've talked a lot about elimination games, and I've tried to be precise in my language. What I've tried to speak of is elimination from the conference race, which would throw you into the at-large field. For USC, this game against Oregon Saturday is an elimination game from at-large consideration, let alone some wild happening. They're probably almost eliminated from getting to the Big Ten championship game anyway. Probably the right set of circumstances could get them there, but this would take them out of the at-large consideration. So that's one team that's out. Miami's sitting on the cusp. If they were to lose another game, lose to Pitt or whatever, they're on the cusp. And but the others, I think we've got this down to about 14 or 15 teams, absent bid stealers, looking for those few spots, and that includes teams that will wind up getting in as conference champions.
Well, my old colleague, Pete and I's colleague, Nick Bromberg, he has the list counting the bid stealers as 30 teams still have a path to the playoff right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important just to note, obviously many of these are not going to come through. It's like a bunch of American, but when people talk about expanding the playoff, there's 30 teams that have a shot at the playoff with 2 weeks to go. Okay. Right. We've accomplished the idea that we have gotten to.
And you're including all the teams still in the fight in the ACC and in the American and the Big 12, right?
His list has got everybody. It's got every possible path. And that's a good, so just 30, you got a shot. Now, not all of them, some they're going to eliminate, whatever, but 30 teams have a chance, and we're going in the final 2 weeks. So that's pretty good. The USC Oregon game to me is going to be a monster. And this is, look, Oregon needs to win the game. They need to win out and they can get in. USC needs to win out, and I still don't know if they can get in. And this is why, what happens if a 10-2 USC is dealing with, when you get down these last spots, a 10-2 Notre Dame that beat them soundly, and a 10-2 Miami that beat Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And so USC's in a tricky spot here. They absolutely have to win. I think it's huge for the program. USC is a momentum program. And if they could make the playoff, even if they could just beat USC, they have a little bit of juice going out there. And if you can get all LA behind you, we know that once that rock starts going down the hill, USC can be as good as anybody can be. But when they don't have momentum, they don't go anywhere. It's not one of these programs that just automatically is going to be pretty good. This is a huge game this weekend, USC at Oregon. But right now, USC's in this weird spot where even if they went out at 10-2, you could end up with a two Big Ten bids, which is crazy. Now they might be number 1 and 2, but Oregon can play their way in for sure. But what's that fourth? Is there going to be a fourth team? Or would there even be a third team? Because USC is just in a bad spot, having lost to Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's a tough spot, because I think if USC wins, then Oregon becomes vulnerable, because you start looking then at Oregon's numbers. Now, their forward-looking metrics, the ones that are predictive, are excellent. But if you start parsing through, the old who'd you play, who'd you beat, then they have some good wins. I'm not suggesting they don't have good wins, but they don't have anything that jumps off the page. And you get the right set of circumstances, and they might be a little vulnerable too.
Yeah.
No doubt. I'm going to add to Dan's USC point on momentum. Right now, I'm looking at ESPN.com's 2026 college football recruiting rankings.
Great recruiting.
For the class of 2026. USC is number 1. They have 18 ESPN 300 commits. Best offensive prospect is a tackle, which is, when USC is its best, they are good up front. And when it has dipped in the last decade or so, they have been pretty pedestrian up front. So they are ahead of Georgia, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, and Texas. So they obviously brought in Chad Bowden, Bowden, for the general manager from Notre Dame, and they have been very aggressive on the recruiting trail. So yeah, I think that's a great point, where if they slip in, this thing could really start rolling.
All right. Oregon has a win at Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And they could lose to USC and then win at Washington. But other than that, they don't have, they're at 10-2. And again, they stack down this list because if there's a bunch of 10-2s, if you got to pick 2 or 3 10-2s, Miami beat Notre Dame beat USC beat Oregon, like head to head is going to presumably choose that. So very, very, I don't know if the hype is on how big this game is, both for how many teams the Big Ten could get in and how and the program. So it's just an enormous game this weekend. But the chance of 5 SEC teams is very, very real with everybody winning out. One of the problems we have though is just these leagues they're just too big. And
yes.
Forget about how good the teams are. Just determining who a champion is. Texas A&M has not played any of the top 7 teams in the SEC. Ohio State has not played any of the top 6 teams in the Big Ten.
Wow.
Like what kind of season is this? Like it's not that they're not good, particularly Ohio State. Whoever they put up against them, they steamroll them like a great team would. But Oregon had to play Indiana. They can play USC. They can play Iowa. They have to play probably the best win for Ohio. The toughest game at Ohio State was at Washington. Maybe Illinois. I mean, those are 18-point games. Buckeyes look great, but what a weird way when you go to 18 teams. Don't go to 18 teams, kids. You end up with these seasons where you go, Ohio State's perfect, but they didn't play anybody in the league, and they're going to get Michigan at the end that's ranked and good for Michigan. They're winning games. The job is to win. They win. Saturday was awesome. Like, did you see the kick? The game-winning kick against Northwestern? It goes out of Wrigley. Like a game-winning field goal went over the state. Imagine some guy's just walking his dog. He doesn't really know much about what's happening. He's walking down Sheffield Avenue. He hears the roar of the crowd. Oh, it's Wrigley. A football comes flying out. Like, wait, what? Total, this is great. Great victory. Michigan State. Nobody thinks that they're going to be probably a 9-3. We'll see what they do against Ohio State, but they're kind of a back end top 25. Just a really weird schedule for Ohio State to have to play this year. Very well 12-0 and not really had much of a schedule lined up for them because this league is too big.
If you want to see some chaos and anger, let Auburn beat Alabama, because I think when the rankings come out, Alabama is probably going to either be the last or next to last at-large team in the field if you look at it based on the rankings. Now, if they lose that one, you can easily cherry pick the arguments and say they lost two games to mediocre teams to bookend the season and find a reason to leave them out. But the flip side of that is going to be Alabama's strength of schedule is number 4. And nobody else among these teams that we're talking about is close to that among the cut line teams, or even some of these at the top. I think Georgia's is top 12 or something like that. You're going to hear some wailing and gnashing of teeth if this happens. Now, it'll still be their fault. It would be like last year. You start finding things that disqualify you, and those will be reasonable arguments. But it'll also be reasonable what you guys are talking about here. If you don't put yourself in harm's way, or fate doesn't put you in harm's way by virtue of these humongous conferences and the way the schedule spits out and falls. Now, those are the breaks at sports. It's the way it goes. Your schedule is what it is. But there will be some frustration, because part of this enhanced metrics, record strength, all of this is a result of a couple of teams getting in last year, having played less challenging schedules. That's the linchpin. That and the thing that caused all of this was Oklahoma working itself right back into the mix by going into Bryant-Denny on Saturday and making every clutch play, every single clutch play. Oklahoma made and won the game and got themselves right back in this thing when it looked as if they would probably be on the outside looking in.
Rece, are you predicting a haunted mansion game for the Iron Bowl?
You know what? I mean, the thing is, if you stop and think about it, there have been a lot of haunted mansion moments. But
so, Dan, this is Rece's bit. Auburn is a haunted mansion.
It is.
Weird things happen.
Weird
in the haunted
stuff
mansion.
happens. I mean, it's not. It's mostly Alabama, but not just Alabama.
Remember the library burned?
Prayer Jordan Hare against Georgia. There was an Arkansas game in which Bo Nix mysteriously was not called for a fumble against Arkansas. Arkansas fans will remember that one very well. They've turned the hoses on fans. They've had the dog try to bite players in the middle of the game. Odd stuff happens there. But Auburn fans would tell you that they've been on the business end of that the last couple of times that Alabama's been there with the Bryce Young drive and the 4 overtime win, and then the Gravedigger play the last time they were there when all seemed lost. So, but even so, it still speaks to the point, Pete. This will not be your average game. Whatever happens, whoever wins the game, it won't be average. It wouldn't be right if it were. Who's ever seen a normal game there? A high stakes normal game. It hasn't happened ever.
So I think, go ahead, Pete. Yeah. I think Alabama can survive that. If they beat Auburn, they get into the SEC championship game. Now the only risk for Alabama is a third loss. I think once you get in that SEC championship game, you're good.
I think so too. So too, Dan. And the numbers sort of favor them. They could, in theory, lose a 3-way tie strength of schedule I read this morning, but I think it looks as if they win that, they'll probably play in the SEC championship.
Which brings me this question. If you're Georgia or Alabama that are still on that fence, do you want to be in the SEC championship game where you have to play a game to try to earn a bye, or maybe you get a bye even if you lose? Or would you rather not and get a home playoff game, which is you get a bye, then a home playoff game, right? And if you're Georgia if you're Georgia, you're 5, right? I think will they move up to 4?
No, they should be 4. I think they'll be 4 this week.
4, okay. Yeah. Would you rather be, or if you're Georgia, would you rather be 5 and get to host Navy and have a home playoff game, less likely to get, the idea of a bye as well as a little less wear and tear on your team? Well, playing Navy, no offense to the Naval Academy, it's going to be probably a less physical game than if you play in the SEC championship game. You have less of a layoff. Would you rather be a home playoff game or appear in your conference championship game?
Well, as a fan, you'd want the home playoff game. And I think Nick Saban put it pretty well on Saturday. It sort of depends on your team. If you're beat up and you need some recovery, then you want the bye, or you'd want the time off. If you are on a roll and relatively healthy, you probably want to keep playing. But in terms of making the conference championship or not making the conference championship game, I would turn your attention to one of the jerseys in my office here, one belonging to Jay Billis. Jay Billis played at Duke. And the famous coach of the Duke Blue Devils used to say, and Pete knows this, Dan, I fancy myself a bad impressionist of coaches, so I'm going to do this now.
You're very good at Lou Holtz.
If they're giving a trophy, I bleeping want it, okay? Coach K, if they're giving a trophy, I want it. You should want to play in your conference championship game and try to win it.
Well, I think one thing that got lost last season a little bit was, everything changed for Georgia in the SEC title game when Carson Beck got hurt, right? Like if they were not playing this, and I'm not going to call the SEC title game meaningless because there is a lot of meaning to winning a conference championship, and those things are there until they're not, because the 14 million people are going to watch them, or whatever the numbers are. They're crazy. The conferences value those games, and in turn, because of the ratings, the networks value those games. So they are linchpins, and to remove them for whatever future playoff format people are scratching up on the back of napkins in these boardrooms here is going to take some pretty significant gymnastics. But I do think that was a piece of empirical evidence to say, okay, does Georgia go and continue to win in the playoff if Carson Beck's healthy? Like if they finished 5th and then they got a home game and they got they had Boise come in or whatever. Like I'd say it's those factors are going to start to pile up if there is evidence of them. So yeah. I just think that's like, that stuff's starting to get more real now, because look, all the actions, the hiring and firing of coaches are playoff oriented. Nobody's doing these things to win conference championships, right? Those are nice, and you got to tell your team, and you got to aim for them. And I have a lot of respect for the leagues and their championships, but like all behavior in the environment in college athletics right now is to make the playoff, right? And win the playoff. It's not to win the league title. So you can see and feel the relevancy of these games waning. They are still very real and very relevant, and they rate and they matter, but they do, like when you look at decision making and what's happening, there could, like Dan said, there could be drawbacks making it there.
Ohio State didn't play in it last year, won the national championship. All those bye teams got beat in the first round. Dan, I think I have a solution that our bosses probably won't like because we just got the SEC championship game, and it has been such a great competitive environment for years. Philip Fulmer once told me that there was more energy and juice in every SEC championship game in which his Tennessee Vols played in than in the national championship game. He said It felt like a bigger deal going in there. I agree with you. I think it's changed. Here's what I think they should do. They do not need to expand the playoff to 20-something or whatever. But if you wanted to expand it to 16, eliminate the conference championship games, and use that weekend as first round on campus, I'm in. That way, then you have 2 rounds on campus. Everybody plays. And, you want to talk about some bracket chaos. You really think number 16 can't beat number 1? Sure they can. If you're doing it like straight seeding, and you probably would still have to, make a concession to get in, 5 conference champions or whatever. But now you add a few more at larges. You get some great competitive games. You get to play them on campus. And I actually believe that will happen once we reach the stage. It's several years down the road, but it will happen once they can replace the money. If they can replace the money with a television contract for those games, replace or enhance the money from the conference championship games, it'll happen then, I think.
I think that too, the conference championship game weekend, it just mucks up the schedule, and we have this, and I said muck, M-U-C-K.
Aggregators.
Got it.
I have bad pronunciation, so I don't want that thing going wrong. Like the national championship game, which you should watch on the ESPN family networks, of course, but it's in like January 20th. Like it would be so much like, I don't know that it works for fans that the season just goes on and on and on. And we don't make a lot of decisions, certainly not at these decision levels where why do we have 18 team conferences, and why do we have all this stuff? And why do we ask fans to travel to 3 straight playoff games? Like nothing's ever about the fans. Nobody's ever thinking about what's good for fans. And that's why I think there's a lot of fans that are saying, I'd rather have a home playoff game. Right.
Dan, it would have it. The plan I just laid out would have us down to 4 before Christmas.
Right. And that I think would be really good. Get 2 rounds of home playoff games where the fans live, instead of sitting there saying, hey, or like, you got Ohio State, they got 1 home playoff game. They had travel 3 straight weekends. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of time. It's hard for the parents of the players. Nobody really thinks of the fans, the communities are there. So that is an advantage there. That is, I agree. Like, listen, Indiana and Ohio State are going to play probably in this championship game. Okay.
It'd be great.
And it's going to be an incredible football game, and it's going to mean a ton to Indiana. And it would be like, at no point in that game will anybody be sitting there, Kurt Cignetti or Ryan Day or any of the players going, you know what, we're going to be a 3 seed anyway. Don't worry about it. It's still going to matter. So these games are going to be good. But a lot of them don't really matter. Should Texas Tech have to beat BYU again and whatever? But I just think there's never enough thought about what is good for the fans. And more home games for these playoffs, because I think a lot of people watch that play, particularly the Notre Dame one on Friday night. The rest of the country look, the snow's falling, they win this game, and everyone going, I want that. I want that. And if you're Indiana going to try to win a Big Ten championship game, it means a ton because you haven't done it. Ohio State, they haven't won one in a while, but probably means a little bit less. And so you sit there and go, well, now they had a home playoff game and Tennessee showed up. They didn't, but that was a whole different world.
From a strategy standpoint, Dan, do you think that ending your season before the NFL playoff stuff really heats up, I think is good? Because I think when you're sitting out there on January 20th, again, people watch the games, right? They rate well and everything like that. But just from like capturing the attention of America, it's hard to do that when you are amid the latter part of the NFL playoffs, right? Because they take up so much oxygen, and you're you're in all these windows and you're battling the playoffs, and you have great games and they're losing. Like, get in the playoff, get out. If you can push everything back in January and make it more of a 1 semester sport, it helps with the portal. It helps with roster management. It helps with, you don't have guys leaving during the playoff. But I think Rece, to do that. Yeah. Yes.
Pete, you'd have 2 massive semifinals on New Year's Day. Massive semifinals on New Year's Day.
Yeah, and then end it the next week. Everybody's happy. And maybe can we start it a week early? Can we just make week 0 week 1? You know what I mean? These are things. Now that's hard, right? You got all these games booked and hotels, and but like there's a lot there. I don't dismiss the logistics of all that, but for like the next one, as we're planning out here, we say, okay, let's move all this. Let's keep our calendar a little bit tighter, because I just think, well, let's just extend it, right? It just became like inertia is like the easiest thing to do. So
I think that there's so many administrators, this is their job, right? So it's like they don't think of the fan. It's all about how much we get more money. We got to take care of our bowl partners. We got to do this. We got to help the networks, whatever it is, instead of what's good for our fans. And so, like, when they would play that New Year's Eve game, they're finally going to move the Rose Bowl earlier, right? And they were playing, like, there was a couple years ago, it was Texas and Washington in the national semifinal. It's after midnight. Nobody running the sport thought, a lot of people got to get up the next morning and go to work. They can't stay up for one of the biggest games of the year. Do more for.
And that was an awesome game that went down the last play.
It was tremendous.
And if you had to be at work at 7 a.m. and Lord knows it's the start of the year, so your boss is all excited and everyone's excited, and it's like, hey man, I got to drive an Amazon truck, or I got to be at a factory or the office, or I got whatever. I just can't stay up and watch this game. Well, you're taking that. The NFL doesn't do that. They don't do that to you. And they know how to do it. So anything that could condense this season so it doesn't run so late, more home games, a little bit more of a flow, I think is good for the fans. I hope somebody considers the fans. I doubt they ever will. They haven't yet, but maybe after 130 years, we're going to have our day.
I will start to advocate for this. Maybe starting this weekend. We'll have some great conference championship games. We'll love the theater. It'll be tremendous because we all love college football. But it's changing. So let's make it even better. More games on campus, big games, fewer worries about tiebreakers and metrics and common opponents. Expand it just enough to make it so that everybody plays the same number of games, and we'll all be good to go. College Game Day will be good to go on the highest leverage game of the weekend, USC and Oregon. We'll talk about that as the next pod will drop sometime around the day before Thanksgiving. Thanks for listening. Be sure to download wherever you prefer to get your podcast or subscribe and never miss a single episode.